Welcome to True Echo, where real life meets the dramatic, the inspirational, and the unforgettable. Today's story starts with one ripped shoe, and ends with a life transformed forever. What happens when a single black father accidentally damages a powerful CEO's $10,000 heels in public? He's humiliated, escorted out, and ready to lose everything, but what unfolds next will challenge everything you think you know about struggle, perception, and redemption. Stay with us. This is one story you won't forget. Malik adjusted the brakes on the stroller with one foot while balancing two hot drinks and a slightly lopsided diaper bag slung across his shoulder. The early morning in downtown Chicago buzzed with urgency. Horns blared in the distance. People rushed past him, phones in hand, eyes on their next meeting, their next latte, their next email. For Malik, this wasn't just another Tuesday. It was another day in survival mode. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours the night before. His janitorial shift ended at 4:30 a.m., and by 5:15, he was back at his apartment, switching from maintenance uniform to full-time dad. His daughter, Amira, was 2 years old, bright-eyed and curious, with a smile that somehow made exhaustion feel like a privilege. He juggled nap schedules, cartoons, diaper changes, and bottle feedings before even thinking about his own needs. Today, all he wanted was a damn coffee. He pushed the stroller into the crowded cafe, murmuring a soft tune to keep Amira calm. The air smelled like fresh pastries and bitter espresso, but the floor had been mopped and not dried properly. It was slick. Malik noticed too late. As he sidestepped to avoid a spilled cup near the register, his worn-out boot caught the edge of something soft. Then came the sound, a subtle, sickening rip. He froze. Before him stood a tall black woman dressed in a tailored pantsuit, clutching a sleek leather bag. But it wasn't the bag or suit that captured the attention of the room, it was her right shoe. Or what remained of it. The tip of her Italian heel had been torn, the leather flayed open where Malik's boot had grazed it. Gasps swept the cafe. Phones paused mid-text. Conversations stopped. The woman looked down, then up at Malik. Her eyes didn't narrow in rage, but they didn't soften either. Her face was unreadable, poised, powerful, silent. I am so sorry, Malik stammered, stepping back, raising a hand. I didn't mean. She didn't answer. She turned to the counter and whispered something to the barista. Malik couldn't hear the words, but he saw the barista nod and then disappear through the side door, eyes wide. The silence around them grew thick. Someone behind Malik muttered, "Broke people shouldn't be near nice things." He felt his ears burn. Shame gripped him like a vice. He bent over, checked on Amira, still safe, still calm, and began slowly backing the stroller toward the exit. He wasn't causing trouble. He wasn't angry. Just embarrassed, humiliated. But as his hand touched the door, 2 security guards walked in. "You'll need to step outside, sir," one said, eyes cold and authoritative. "It was an accident," Malik replied, voice low. "Please. I'll pay for the shoe." "It's a $10,000 heel," the second guard cut in, smirking. "You sure you've got that in your couch cushions?" The woman didn't say a word. Arms folded, face blank, she let the scene unfold around her. The judgment, the punishment, the humiliation. Outside, the wind stung Malik's face. He pulled Amira's tiny blanket up around her neck. He rocked her gently. She didn't cry, just looked up at him with those wide eyes, trusting, unknowing. All he'd wanted was a coffee. All it took was one step. Later that afternoon, Malik stood on the top floor of a marble-floored office building, mop in hand, eyes on the reflection of his own weary face. The same building where everything had happened just hours before. His uniform smelled of bleach. His hands were rough from constant scrubbing. Every time he bent over to clean, the strap of the baby monitor clipped to his belt tugged slightly. Amira was with Miss Darlene, a kind old woman who charged him almost nothing for a few hours of care. It had been a long shift already. He tried to keep his mind off the morning's events, but shame clung to him like sweat. Even here, even at work, he felt like people were whispering about it. The look on that woman's face still lingered in his mind, cold, unreadable. Why hadn't she said anything? Not a word. Not even to call off the guards. He tried to shake it off. One mistake didn't define him. But then, as he buffed the floors near the executive elevators, the doors pinged open with a soft chime. She walked out. The woman from the cafe. Same powerful posture. Same graceful stride. Same silence, but this time, something shifted. Their eyes locked. He froze, standing upright with the mop still in his hand. A million thoughts raced through him. Would she recognize him? Would she say something? Would she have him removed from the building now, too? She paused. Her eyes swept over his janitor's uniform, the headset still buzzing softly with Miss Darlene's voice. The exhaustion in his face. The quiet dignity with which he stood, straight spine, tired eyes, pride intact. Then, she spoke. Just 2 words. Your daughter. Malik blinked. Yes. Amira. She's with a sitter right now. There was a long silence. She studied him. Not with pity, not with superiority, but with genuine curiosity. Her eyes dropped to the badge on his chest. Then to the business card on the floor near the mop bucket. He hadn't even realized he dropped it. She picked it up. Malik James. Founder, Mentoring Youth Project. He nodded. I try to help kids who age out of foster care. I aged out myself. Finance background, before everything. I do what I can, nights and weekends. Her brows lifted slightly. You're not what I expected. He almost laughed. Neither was this morning. She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. Then she handed him back the card, turned, and left. No apology. No small talk. Just something different. The next morning, Malik showed up for his regular shift at 6 a.m. But something was off. As he walked into the break room to clock in, the building manager was waiting. Mr. James, he said. Come with me. Malik's heart sank. He followed the man down the corridor in silence, expecting a write-up. A termination. A lecture. Instead, they entered a private meeting room, where a sharply dressed assistant waited beside a folder with his name on it. Inside was a note. Elegant handwriting on thick paper. You taught me something I'd forgotten. What struggle really looks like. Let's talk. Over coffee. My treat this time. Ava Langford. He blinked. Ava Langford. That Ava Langford. The CEO of Langford and Gray. One of the most powerful venture capitalists in the Midwest. His hands trembled as he folded the note. And tucked inside that same folder was a printed profile summary, with highlights from his LinkedIn, notes about his nonprofit work, his finance certification, and even a scribbled question. Why is this man mopping floors instead of managing futures? That night, Malik sat in his tiny kitchen, staring at the invitation. Amira slept in her crib nearby. He thought of all the moments he'd nearly given up. The rejection letters. The times he skipped meals so Amira wouldn't have to. The moments the world reminded him he was invisible. But maybe, just maybe, someone had finally seen him. Not as a mistake. Not as a threat. But as a man worth knowing. Malik stood outside the upscale cafe the next morning, dressed in his only button-down shirt and a clean pair of slacks he'd ironed 3 times. He wore the same shoes that had stepped on Ava's heel, worn at the toes, but now carefully polished. A simple leather notebook was tucked under his arm. It held resumes, ideas, and the budget projections for his youth mentorship program, everything he'd been trying to pitch for 2 years without success. He hesitated at the door. It felt surreal walking back into the place where yesterday he was treated like a nuisance. Like a shadow. Like something that didn't belong. But today, he had a meeting with the CEO. A hostess moved to intercept him the moment he stepped in. "Sir, I'm afraid." A voice behind her interrupted smoothly. "He's with me." Ava Langford stood beside the corner table, tall in another expertly cut suit, this one dove gray. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Coffee?" Malik nodded. "Saturday, thank you. For this. I didn't expect." "To hear from me?" she said, one eyebrow raised. "I don't blame you. I was cold that morning." He shrugged. "You didn't owe me anything." A pause. "Maybe I did." A waiter arrived. She ordered a flat white. Malik asked for the same. The air between them wasn't tense, more like charged with something unspoken. Curiosity. Respect. Maybe even possibility. "I looked you up," Ava said. "Your resume, your nonprofit, your background in finance. I also saw your volunteer work with youth programs in Bronzeville. That's not the profile of a janitor. It's the profile of someone who hit a wall," Malik replied, not defensive, just honest. "Got laid off, custody battle, couldn't get rehired fast enough. I needed a job, so I cleaned. Still do. You've kept going." He looked at her. "What choice did I have?" Ava's eyes didn't waver. "You'd be surprised how many people quit at the first, 'No, you didn't.'" They talked for 20 more minutes. Not about pity. Not about guilt. But about ideas. Real ones. She asked him how his program worked. He showed her a chart of how financial literacy changed the futures of teens aging out of group homes. She asked about his biggest need. He said structure, exposure, a platform. She said she might have just the thing. "I run a department called Consult for a Community," she explained. "It's low profile but growing. We fund and integrate real social impact initiatives inside for-profit structures. I want you to come consult on it." Malik blinked. "Consult? Me? You understand people no spreadsheet ever will," Ava replied. "You've lived what we only study in data sets. You know what communities need, because you live in them. And most importantly, because you don't quit." The waiter brought the check. Ava covered it before Malik could even reach for his wallet. "I don't believe in charity," she said, standing. "But I believe in investing in people who refuse to let their circumstances define them." As they stepped outside, Ava turned to him one last time. "This isn't about a shoe," she said. "It never was. It's about what I saw when I looked down and you didn't flinch. You stood back up. I respect that." Then she walked away, leaving him stunned, hopeful, and, for the first time in a long while, seen. That night, Malik stayed up sketching out program upgrades. He called his sister to tell her the news. She cried. He held Amira close, whispering to her about all the things that might be coming. The next day, he received the official offer, part-time consultant with a full-time path pending probation, starting salary triple what he earned cleaning floors. All because he stepped on a $10,000 shoe. And the woman wearing it looked deeper than the surface. 3 weeks into his new role as a consultant for Consult for a Community, Malik still hadn't gotten used to the executive badge hanging from his neck. The same elevators that once felt like forbidden territory now opened for him automatically. No more cleaning supplies, no awkward glances from white-collar staff, just him, his ideas, and his daughter's tiny picture clipped inside his planner. His office wasn't huge, but it was his. A window view of the Chicago skyline. A real desk. A company-issued laptop. For the first time in years, Malik felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was finally building. The first few days had been overwhelming. He met with project coordinators, pitched youth outreach ideas, and sat through hours of slide decks. But every time he felt doubt creeping in, he reminded himself, he belonged here. His story had brought him through fire. Now, he had a seat at the table. Ava Langford rarely hovered, but she checked in often, brief, pointed conversations in hallways, or a quick nod during staff briefings. She didn't coddle him. She challenged him. "I saw your notes on the community housing initiative," she said one morning. "You're good. But you're still playing it safe." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Safe? You're pitching what you think will get approved," Ava said. "Not what needs to be done." He folded his arms. "What needs to be done is expensive. Then convince them it's more expensive not to do it." It was the kind of challenge he craved, and the kind that woke up everything inside him that corporate life had long buried. Outside the office, Malik's world began to shift too. Miss Darlene, who had once watched Amira during odd hours, now helped full-time with support from a childcare stipend the company offered. For the first time in Amira's young life, she had structure, stability, and a father who wasn't constantly one shift away from breaking. One rainy afternoon, Malik took Amira to a bookstore in Hyde Park. He let her pick out a picture book, then sat in the kids' corner while she flipped through pages, her tiny fingers tracing each illustration. "Daddy works in a big building," she said suddenly, with a proud grin. He smiled. "That's right, baby. I like it better than the broom place." He laughed. "Me too." Back at work, Malik's reputation grew fast. He had a way of translating complex community issues into actionable plans. He didn't talk at people, he listened. When he spoke at a board meeting about funding for single parents seeking second degrees, even the CFO nodded. But not everyone was on his side. One executive, Michael Dalton, a man with a slick smile and Wall Street manners, constantly pushed back. "It's noble," Michael said in one meeting, flipping through Malik's proposal, "but is it profitable?" Malik didn't blink. "Empathy builds loyalty. Loyalty drives talent. Talent builds profit." Ava watched from the head of the table. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. After the meeting, she found Malik near the elevator. "Dalton doesn't like to be challenged," she said. "I don't like to pretend," Malik replied. She smirked. "Good. Now sharpen that. You'll be presenting to the partners next week." His heart skipped. "The partners? You've got 10 minutes to prove why your vision matters more than his doubts," she said. "Use every second." That night, Malik didn't sleep. He rewrote his presentation 5 times. Practiced in front of a mirror. Called his old mentor for advice. And when the day came, he walked into the boardroom, not as a janitor, not as a mistake, but as a man who had survived and come back stronger. He spoke with clarity, heart, and numbers. Told the story of a foster kid who studied finance by flashlight, who mopped floors to feed his child, who understood what people needed because he was those people. By the time he finished, the room was quiet. Ava nodded. "That'll be all, gentlemen. The partners approved the pilot program with full funding." Malik didn't smile right away. He just exhaled. Later that evening, Ava passed him in the hallway. "You did what most people can't," she said. "You made them feel." Malik looked her in the eye. "You gave me the room." She shook her head. "You kicked the door open." 3 months after the Thornhill incident, Malik walked into a community center on the south side, this time, not as a volunteer, but as the director of social impact initiatives for Langford and Gray. His name was on the flyers. His program was fully funded. The folding chairs were packed with single parents, youth leaders, and aspiring entrepreneurs, some who came just to hear how a janitor became a voice in corporate leadership. As he stepped up to the podium, he felt the weight of every job he'd ever worked. Every overnight shift. Every look of pity. Every moment he'd nearly given up. 3 years ago, he began, I was cleaning floors in a building where no one knew my name. One morning, I accidentally stepped on a CEO's shoe. I thought that was the worst moment of my life. Turns out, it was the start of everything. The crowd laughed softly. Some nodded. But all were listening. He went on to explain how one act of grace, not charity, not guilt, but grace, had given him the platform to build something meaningful. He didn't tell them they had to wait for luck. He told them they already had everything they needed: resilience, grit, vision. After the event, a young woman approached him, nervously holding a tattered notebook. "Mr. James," she said, "my mom works nights, and I've been trying to start a mobile tutoring business. I just don't know where to begin." Malik smiled. "You just did." He handed her his business card. "Come see me next week. Let's build it together." Back at the office, Ava called him in. "We just got picked up by a national initiative," she said, handing him a press release. "Your program's going regional. The White House's Economic Task Force wants to sit down with you next quarter." Malik stared at the paper, stunned. "Me?" "Yes," Ava said, arms crossed. "Because you're not just changing lives, you're redefining how companies see impact." He looked at her. "You knew this would happen?" "No," she said. "But I hoped it would. And I bet on you." He lowered his head slightly, emotion creeping into his voice. "Why? You didn't owe me anything." She leaned forward. "You don't need someone to owe you to recognize your worth." Then, after a beat, she added, "And honestly, watching you grow reminded me why I started this firm in the first place. To break open the doors that only ever opened for people who looked like me, came from where I came from. I forgot that somewhere along the way." Malik nodded. "Then maybe I'm just returning the favor." They shared a look, no longer awkward or strained, but mutual and grounded in respect. Weeks passed. Malik traveled to Detroit, Milwaukee, and St. Louis to set up pilot programs. His nonprofit, Mentoring Youth, was now being backed by corporate sponsors. Young men and women who aged out of the foster system finally had pathways, real ones, not just pamphlets. And he never forgot who he was. Not once. Every time he passed a janitor in a hallway, he greeted them by name. He donated to Miss Darlene's church. He started a childcare grant in Amira's name. And at night, when the lights dimmed, he would sit beside his daughter and whisper, "Today was a good day, baby. You helped Daddy make the world better." Winter crept into Chicago like a silent thief, frosting windshields and fogging up the windows of Langford and Gray's sleek glass building. Malik stood at the window of his office, hands in his pockets, watching the snowfall settle like powdered sugar across the skyline. He still had trouble believing it sometimes. The title. The salary. The influence. The trust. But what grounded him more than the view or the accolades were the stories, the real people he'd been able to help. And one story in particular was about to come full circle. It started with a call from Ava. "There's an internal event this Friday," she said. "Company-wide. All partners, department heads, and media. I want you to speak." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Me? You've become the face of what this company says it believes in," she said. "It's time we live it out loud." He hesitated. "Do you want the polished version? The talking points?" Ava smiled. "I want your version." The day of the event arrived. Ava introduced him on stage with a brief nod, then stepped aside. Malik adjusted the mic. The room was full of suits, lights, and cameras. But his nerves vanished when he spotted Amira near the back, sitting beside Miss Darlene in her Sunday best, holding a tiny homemade sign that read, "Go Daddy." He took a breath. "Almost a year ago," he began, "I tore a $10,000 shoe." A few chuckles. "I was sleep deprived, broke, carrying 2 cups of coffee and pushing a stroller. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I was just trying to survive. But in a moment of shame, I did something I've always done. I stood up, stayed calm, and apologized. He paused. I thought that would be the end of it. But someone chose to see beyond the accident. She saw effort. Determination. Maybe even potential. And because she didn't look away, my life, and my daughter's life, changed. The room was silent now. But this isn't just my story. It's a story about how we, as companies, leaders, neighbors, humans, choose to see people. Whether we look at the surface, or we take a moment to understand what's underneath. He finished to a standing ovation. Amira clapped the loudest. After the event, Ava approached him in the hallway. "You nailed it," she said, arms folded. "Thank you. For trusting me." "I didn't do it for you," she said. "I did it for this company. And for the future I want my daughter to grow up in." He nodded. "Still. I won't forget it." She smiled. "Neither will I." Then, with a glance at his worn, though now polished, boots, she added, "You ever get new shoes?" Malik chuckled. "Not yet." "Well," she said, turning down the hallway, "don't step on mine again." That night, he and Amira walked through their neighborhood, snow crunching beneath their feet. She tugged on his coat. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby." "Was that lady a fairy godmother?" He laughed. "No, sweetie. She was something better." "What?" "A person who remembered how to see." The following spring, Langford and Gray launched one of its boldest initiatives yet, Step Forward, a nationwide program supporting working-class parents through mentorship, job placement, and entrepreneurship training. At the helm was Malik James, now officially promoted to Vice President of Community Innovation. The man who once mopped lobby floors now sat in strategy meetings with senators, mayors, and corporate titans. But his heart never left the ground level. Malik insisted every major launch include a neighborhood partnership. He spent weekends in community centers, held Zoom calls with struggling single parents, and gave scholarships in his mother's name, though she never lived to see how far he'd come. And through it all, he remained deeply connected to his why. Amira. He tucked her in every night, even when it meant rushing home after red-eye flights. He brought her to Take Your Kid to Work Day, in her tiny blazer, where she strutted through the halls like a CEO in training. And when her kindergarten teacher asked her what her dad did for a living, she proudly replied, "He helps people who work too hard get a chance." One quiet evening, Ava invited Malik to a small gathering, just 6 guests, no press. At her brownstone home, surrounded by books and black and white photography, they sipped wine and swapped stories. "I meant to ask," Ava said, smiling, "do you ever regret that day?" Malik raised an eyebrow. "You mean, the heel?" "Yes." He laughed. "Only that I didn't step on both." They both chuckled. "But seriously," Ava said, "I've worked with brilliant men and women my entire career. But what you've done with opportunity, it's rare. You remind people that struggle isn't failure. It's fuel." He nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words settle in. "And you remind people," he said, "that power means nothing if you don't use it to lift someone else." They toasted. To the quiet power of being seen. And that's how a single torn shoe changed not one, but thousands, of lives. Malik James wasn't looking for sympathy. He wasn't trying to make headlines. All he wanted was coffee and a safe place to raise his daughter. But through one accident, one moment of silence, and one decision to see past circumstance, 2 people built something greater than they imagined. So the next time you see someone struggling, ask yourself, are you looking at their shoes or their story? Thanks for watching True Echo. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful narratives just like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And drop your city in the comments, we want to see how far this story travels. Remember, sometimes, one wrong step leads exactly where you were meant to go.